So start the recording and we're good. Okay, well, I would like to welcome you all to our Riverside San Bernardino chapter of the California Native Plant Society monthly presentation and meeting. We meet the third Saturdays of the month at 10 in the morning. And as you all know, there are many things going on today because it's Earth Week coming up, and there are many Earth Day celebrations going on today, and dedications and stuff. So I feel good that we have actually some people in the room today, and I know that there are more people online. This presentation will be recorded, so people that had to miss it because of conflicts will be able to view it later, which is wonderful. So I'm Arlie Montalvo, and I'm the president of our local chapter, and I'm still welcoming people into the room. I just want to tell you about a couple of upcoming events before I introduce Kate Kramer, who will then introduce our speaker, Gordon Pratt. We have an event next Saturday, which is our Native Garden Ramble in City Gardens. We just have two gardens. They're big habitat gardens that we're trying to show people that in cities and in public spaces, you can create habitat with lots of wonderful native plants. And so we will be having 3 tours at a garden in Redlands at Caroline Park in the morning. And so there are different start times, and it's all on the web. If you go to our website, you can see the flyer, and many of you will have received the notice in the MailChimp. Also, in the afternoon at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, we will tour the native plant area habitat garden and habitat and pollinator garden at Ryan Bonaminio Park, which is right at the base of Mount Rubidoux at the western end of Ryan Bonaminio Park. And you can see what we did there is through the habitat enhancement environmental landscaping project. It's 1.17 acres. Caroline Park is closer to 13 acres, I believe. But these are just wonderful demonstrations. So I hope some of you can sneak away from your other garden tours that are on the same day in Redlands and Riverside and view these amazing public gardens that create wonderful habitat for plants and wildlife. After that, on May 9th, there's going to be a field trip where the notice will be out really soon. It's going to be a hike up to the Champion Oak that Tim Krantz will lead. It's a very rigorous, steep uphill climb, so you have to be able to really, go over 1,000 feet in less than a mile uphill. It's about 3 miles round trip. The information will be coming out in a MailChimp, I believe, in the next week or so. And then our third Saturday of May, we'll have an in-person only program. It'll be here at the Resource Conservation District, but it will be back in the other room, the big conference room, because we need lots of plugs and tables, because we're asking you to bring your devices. You can bring your computers and your notepads and other electronics, and we will help you navigate CalScape, which is a wonderful program, show you how to use the wonderful offerings in CalScape, and then also CalFlora, and possibly if there's time, if some of you are interested, and if Erin Eccles is there with us, maybe we'll get a little bit into iNaturalist as well, but that's a lot for one day. So, but it'll be a hands-on experience, and we'll be there to help you. And then we'll be having elections for officers. So if anybody's interested in serving in any capacity on our board, we have elections at the third Saturday in June meeting. There will be information coming to your emails about the election slate for you to view. But please contact us if you're interested in serving on the board or on committees. because that new slate of people begins July 1st. And I need a break as president. I'm willing to help. If there's somebody willing to run as co-president, I will help you learn the ropes. I will help do the reporting. I will help with all that kind of stuff. So this is trying to get new people into our organization to help things along, hopefully younger than me. Okay, so I think that'll be it. Oh, and then in that third Saturday in June, June 20th, in addition to having our election, we will have a wonderful presentation on documenting a rare sage in the Mecca Hills and Oricopia Mountains by Melanie Davis. And so that should be really exciting. And we couldn't fit in a field trip this year because of the season being so condensed. Everything happened way too fast. So maybe next year we can get her to do a field trip for us. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce Kate Kramer. And Kate, I'm going to leave it to you to do the introduction.
My pleasure.
Going away.
Well, welcome everybody. I don't know if you can see me, but I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can't see you.
Maybe that's really good. Okay. I just like to say that not every part of the country has a local entomologist, but we are really fortunate and that we have Dr. Gordon Pratt. He specializes in butterflies. He's a lepidopterist, and he came originally to Southern California to do his dissertation work at UC Riverside, and he worked on dotted blue butterflies. And these are the little blue things that fly around various species of buckwheats. And that's a continuing interest of his. But Gordon's rather unique in that he's really focusing on the host plants that the butterflies use, that they lay their eggs on for their caterpillars. So not too many people focus on what butterflies lay eggs on which plants. He's written a wonderful field guide to the Joshua Tree National Park butterflies, which if you haven't seen, I'd highly recommend. But today he's here to tell you about our project with lemon lilies and sphinx moths, and especially the sphinx moth part. So Gordon, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Kate. My laugh comes first. Here I am.
All right.
Okay. I got interested in the lemon lily pollinators from Kate maybe about a year ago, and I still have not seen the actual lemon lily. But this is the lemon lily. It's a rather beautiful plant, and part of its problem was it is a beautiful plant, and a lot of people over-collected the bulbs back in the 1800s and 1900s. And that has made it a lot rarer. And it's also now suffering from sometimes being overeaten by gophers, and weeds are kind of pushing it out. And climate change has made things a little drier than it used to be, so the bulbs are not doing as well. This is a fantastic photograph of the sphinx moth coming to the nectar of it at 8:30 or 8:26. At this, I think it's the San Jacinto Wildlife Refuge and it was photographed by Jennifer G. I cannot tell which species of sphinx this is, but I can tell you it's in the sphinx genus by the actual abdomen of the moth. If I had a clearer picture of the wings, I could tell you, but the only one so far, the only sphinx that they have found with the lemon lily is what's called the elegant sphinx, or Sphinx perelegans. The sphinx genus is really complicated and has gone through a lot of problems, particularly with the food plants. Well, many of you may probably know me as a lepidopterist that works on butterflies. And the butterflies I work on are about this big. You can barely see them, and they all feed on wild buckwheats. Well, in my early years, I spent a lot of time rearing moths. I love rearing these giant moths. You can see Luna moth, Cecropia moth, and Polyphemus moth. they're really neat to actually get to mate in captivity. And my dad actually made this cage for them, which was rather cool. This is a sphinx larva. The sphinxes have a horn at the end. And this species has 4 horns up at the head. And that's why it's called the 4-horned sphinx. It feeds almost exclusively on elm. And this is what the adult looks like. Notice that the wings of the sphinx moths, the front wing is very, very large. And the hind wing is generally very, very small. Well, I didn't really get to know the sphinxes really, really well until I got into doing my master's. I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and there was a little town just north of Kingston, set in amongst all this woods and ranches and what have you. And this town only had these local grocery stores and various other things. And at night, I would go to this because it was really, really good for moths. I would go there often, particularly in the summer, trying to get these neat moths. Well, one night, I looked up at the street light, and I saw, oh my God, it's an imperial moth. And then I let out, oh my God, 5 more. It's a female. Well, I love females. Part of the reason I love females is I can get them to lay eggs for me and rear the larvae. And this one, well, as I was watching it, police vehicle came in behind me and stopped. And he watched me. I'm so used to having policemen look at me late at night because I'm out doing these really funny things. And he watched me, and he watched me. I don't know if you ever watched a moth flying around a streetlight, but it flies in circles. Well, moths get dizzy, just like people do. And eventually came, and at that, I hopped over a bunch of things and threw my net down on over. I was a lot more agile back in those days. And at this, the policeman got out of the car. He says, I guess you're for real. Well, yeah, like I said, I've had had to speak to a lot of policemen over the years while going out in the field. This is a cool larva, and I reared a whole pile of them because I caught that female, and she laid a pile of eggs for me. You can see the evolutionary relationship within its group. It's closely related to the hickory horned devil, and basically looks almost identical to the hickory horned devil. And this is the mature larvae, which looks rather different from the hickory horned devil. But boy, I thought it was a beautiful caterpillar. Well, one of the neat things, sphinxes are perfect as pollinators, particularly for plants that are highly isolated out in the field, which is what the lemon lily is. They're pockets which are very distant from each other. One of the things you notice is they've got a very long proboscis. This is the proboscis right here. And another thing is they're very thick in the thoracic segments. And that's because they have these huge muscles to help keep those wings beating. I mean, these wings are beating like 100 times per minute or something, or even more. And this is because they look so much like a hummingbird, they're called hummingbird moths. This is a group that only flies during the day. This is Hemaris thisbe, and it's feeding on wild bergamot, which is kind of like our mountain mints. But because they're always flying and using a lot of energy, they need to feed regularly. So they have to go to flowers frequently too. And this also is another factor in these being good pollinators. Some sphinxes have been recorded in the tropics to go 50 miles in a single night, which is a fair distance. I don't know very many moths that do that. Anyway, you can see how deep that they can get into the actual flower itself. This is another shot of the sphinx moth. Now, the lemon lily needs to be pollinated. When you grow the lemon lily inside of a greenhouse and you exclude pollinators, it has very, very poor seed production. Whereas compared to that out in the field. And one of the things that we're really interested in is identifying all of the different pollinators of the lemon lily. Right now, we only know one and possibly a second one, which is not as good, which is Hyles lineata, which is the striped mourning sphinx. And understand how to maintain these populations, we have to know what sort of food plants that they're using. We should find out about their predators and parasites and et cetera, and what the effects of weather conditions. And so we can maintain or help maintain out in the field good populations of the actual sphinx moth. Well, these are all sphinx moths that I've collected in my yard. I'm at about 4,500 feet just south of Anza. And I can see the Santa Rosa Mountains from my yard. Now, the one at the bottom right, that's the striped mourning sphinx. The one in the very center is the elegant sphinx or Sphinx perelegans. They all have different food plants as far as we know. The two on the top right are manduca. The top one is the tobacco hornworm, and the lower one is tomato hornworm. And then above the Sphinx perelegans is the great ash sphinx. I've never been able to, it doesn't come to my house lights like the elegant does, but I know that it's there because I find the frass, which is the crap that comes out of the caterpillar on the ground, and that helps me locate the actual caterpillar up in the ash tree. It feeds, as far as I know, only on ash. And then there's a small sphinx, this one right here, called Sphinx sequoia. It feeds only on junipers and incense cedar.
Gordon, can you describe to the people online where that moth is on the page? On the slide.
Oh, it's on the top left is Sphinx sequoia. And the one below it is the obscure sphinx, Uranus obscura. And then below that is the local hummingbird moth. And that's called the Rocky Mountain hummingbird moth. And it feeds on largely honeysuckle and Symphyrocarpus. There is another species which occurs in this area that could be an actual pollinator of the lemon lily, and that's the Vashti sphinx. It feeds exclusively on Symphyrocarpus, and for a long time they didn't realize that these two species were separate. They'd actually called it perelegans because it looks so much like it. But perelegans will not, as far as I know, feed on Symphyrocarpus. Well, we basically picked two locations, two major mountain ranges to compare to each other. One's in the San Jacinto Mountains and the other one's in the Santa Rosa Mountains. The reason this is really useful is because of the fact that the food plants in each of those areas are very, very different. The habitat is very different. The Santa Rosa Mountains have a lot of dry habitat, whereas the San Jacintos are much moister. We know that Sphinx perelegans occurs at the Black Mountain area, but there could be a pile of other species in the Santa Rosa Mountains. And in fact, there's even the rustic sphinx could be there, pollinated the lemon lily. Since these moths can fly over 50 miles in a single night, they can go to they can start out at Palm Springs and fly up to the top of the Santa Rosas and pollinate the lemon lilies up there and then fly back down. The rustic sphinx, which is the one I'm talking about right now, it feeds on Chelopsis linearifolius, which is the desert willow. So, and that generally occurs at relatively low elevations. I planted some in my yard, and guess what happened? I got larvae of the moth. It surprised me. I didn't know the rustic sphinx occurred up at high elevations like that. Okay. One of the neat things about the sphinx moths is they all have a horn on the very last abdominal segment. Now, as the caterpillars get larger, that horn sometimes is lost in some of the populations or some of the species. In the sphinx genus, they maintain the horn throughout. So generally, you can identify the sphinxes, that they're sphinxes, just by looking for the horn at the tip. Where they've lost the horn, there's generally with sort of a glassy circular structure that has replaced it. This is the bumblebee hummingbird moth. You can see the blue horn at the tip. This one feeds exclusively on honeysuckle. I do not know if it will actually feed on the closely related Symphocarpus or the snowberry. I think it's a beautiful caterpillar. I had to catch the female and then get her to lay eggs to get this. There's another sphinx moth, which is found on grape that pollinates plants. This is the Akerman sphinx, and I show a caterpillar here of the Akerman sphinx. As you can imagine, this was probably not a very common sphinx moth at one time, because grape is not common naturally in the environment. But because so many people now plant it in their yards, it's practically everywhere. Well, so is the sphinx. The sphinx, this was photographed in my backyard. This is what the horn looks like in the mature larva. The younger larva has a curve, like it's almost like a tendril, the horn. It's rather neat. Now that species actually flies during the period of time in which the lemon lily blooms. So it could be a pollinator of the plant, but it would not probably be a natural pollinator. But because now we have a lot of grape planted in Southern California, it can do a lot of pollination. This is another sphinx moth. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little horn at the tip. This is Euproserpinus phaeton. I don't know, it's a gray and white sphinx, but this species will not, and I say this for sure, it will not pollinate the lemon lily. It only pollinates really, really low stuff on open soils, and it's doing it largely with Chamasonia, various primrose species. And the other factor that plays a really big role is it doesn't fly during the bloom period of the lemon lily. This shows a close-up of the actual horn, which helps identify it as a sphinx moth. This is a sphinx that's fairly common in my yard, but it has a very, very short proboscis, so it will not pollinate any plants. Plus the fact it only flies in January and February, which is way out of the lemon lily bloom period. But boy, is it a beautiful moth. Unfortunately, this is the Arctonotus. Oh, I don't know the common name. I know the scientific name, Arctonotus lucidus. It probably has a common name. That sounds good, yeah. This is the green velvet moth. Anyway, it feeds on Clarkia and may feed on primroses to some extent too. And then there's the eyed sphinxes. Now, the thing about the eyed sphinxes is all of the eyed sphinxes, it's a whole almost subfamily of the sphinxes that feed on willows or members of the Salicaceae. It would also feed on cottonwoods. These sphinxes have very, very short proboscis. And rather than actual feed during their adult life, everything is fed upon from their fat reserves. I have a species of the eyed sphinx in my yard, feeding on the willows that I planted around my pond. Now, the caterpillar food plants for the elegant sphinx are complicated because we really didn't understand the different species of the sphinxes. There's a sphinx called Sphinx Vashti, which feeds only on Symphocarpus, which is a snowberry. And because the caterpillar looks so much like the elegant sphinx, that was included as a food plant for the elegant sphinx, but it's not. Only Vashti feeds on it. And at the time, we didn't realize that Vashti even occurred in our area, but because it occurs in areas where the snowberry is found, it's here. Well, anyway, the list that I that I had of the food plants were mountain mahogany, ash, manzanita, western azalea, cherry, and other rosaceae and ericaceae. The other rosaceae are included because they've been found on apple and cherry. Now, ash is not a food plant. When I got a female to lay eggs and I tried to rear them on ash, they wouldn't touch it. But the second I put in the Symphocarpus, they started feeding. I left ash in with them just to see if, occasionally they would feed on the ash. No, they didn't touch it. So ash is not on this list. And this is where I did the actual testing. And the reason that ash was listed as a food plant was because another sphinx moth looks very, very similar to Parreligans or the elegant sphinx, and that's the ash sphinx, Sphinx cherces. And I have this moth in my yard, but I've never been able to see the adults. I've reared the caterpillars because I would find the frass on the ground, and sure enough, look up and find the caterpillar. This is an elegant sphinx adult. Notice how dark it is. There's a close relative of it called the Ocellus sphinx, which has a range that starts after the range of the elegant sphinx stops. And they share some characters that suggest they might be the same species. The only difference is the Ocellus sphinx is much lighter than the elegant sphinx. This is what the egg looks like. Now, if you go out looking for eggs of butterflies and moths, this one's laid on the underside of leaves, whereas the swallowtail, which looks very, very similar, is laid on the top of the leaves. But the difference between them is the sphinx eggs are oval. You can see this is not completely circular. The swallowtail eggs are completely circular. And they're both green, just like this. So that if you don't know the differences, you can mistake them. This is the first instar. You can see how long the horn is after it came out of that egg. I mean, that horn is almost as long as the actual egg is. The interesting thing, too, is this horn does not come to one single point. It comes to 2 points. And it's maintained through most of the larva. This is a second instar. You can see how cryptic it is. It actually looks like the leaf on the Symphocarpus. This is Symphocarpus betuloides. This is a second instar, about to go into the third instar. Notice that the head capsule, which is up here, can they see my head?
No, not online.
Okay, well.
See that little thing on left of the screen, the little circle of the green pointer? That's below your picture.
Oh, here?
It's not an annotator. Yeah, try just moving. No, you have to do it with your cursor.
Oh.
Sorry. No, let's go. No, but it is.
It won't move.
Okay.
Now, is it describing where something?
Oh.
Yeah, we gotta be careful there. You can screw everything up. But anyway, if you look at the head capsule, which is at the opposite end from the horn, you can see that it's actually slipping. It's separating from the actual exoskeleton of the caterpillar. And that head capsule is shed when it goes into the next instar. And this is the next instar. You can see the skin below the actual exoskeleton that it's shed beneath the actual horn itself. Still, the caterpillar has that very similar structure, or I don't know what you would call that the actual leaf looks like. But when you look at a leaf, it has that white pattern, white-green pattern. And there is the third instar about to shed into the fourth instar. And you can see the cercocarpus there. And there's the fourth instar. Now, one of the things when you're out there having to identify the food plants of these caterpillars, you've got to be able to identify them through various stages. You know why? Because the fact these caterpillars can be parasitized. And if you want to know what they're feeding on, you can't rear it to the adult to find out, because the parasites, they're called parasitoids, they actually kill the larva. They don't live and let the larva continue to live after they emerge. They kill the actual larva. So being able to see the structures of these caterpillars can help you identify. Now, how you identify the mature, elegant sphinx is the head capsule is brown, which is rather unusual with a lot of the other sphinxes. They're generally green. Now, this is only at the last instar. The other instars, they do have green head capsule. The horn at the end of the abdomen is blue, and there are no eye spots along where the thoracic spiracles or the spiracles actually occur. Those eye spots are very common in a closely related genus called the Manduca. And there are also purplish slashes with white and blue along the sides of each segment. And here's the caterpillar. You can see the brown head capsule, the blue horn, and the actual patterning. It's a really beautiful caterpillar, I think. But I am somewhat biased, I must admit. This is an absolutely positive character for this species. See that black, almost like an eye spot in the head capsule? That's just sort of partially open. When this caterpillar gets scared or something, it will expand and expose that eye spot. And they'll think that it's maybe a snake or something. And that'll scare them off. But there's only one other species that has that spot, and that's the Celis. Remember the one I told you before, which has a range that begins where the other one ends? So a Celis begins, it's a more eastern species. But it has that eye spot as well. None of the other species of sphinx have that. Now, one of the neat things about sphinxes is they like to pupate in the ground. There are a number of moths that actually do that. That Saturnid that I showed you before called the imperial moth, it burrows into the ground to pupate. A lot of moths are known to make cocoons. The sphinxes do not make cocoons. They go down into the ground. The Manduca can go down a couple of feet into the ground, looking for a good spot to actually pupate. And you can see this, what they do is when they found a pupation site in the ground, they turn and twist and release fluid into the soil, which causes it as kind of a mud cocoon to form, which dries and actually creates a pocket of air in the place where they occur. One of the things that they've noticed about this sphinx is they like to pupate in gopher burrows. If you ever go to a gopher burrow, you'll understand why. The soil is really soft and easy to penetrate. Whereas, you go out into the regular ground, a lot of the ground can have cryptogamic rust on it and be very, very difficult to penetrate. So I actually tried that to get them to pupate. I threw in gopher burrow soil, and sure enough, they pupated, but they may have done it in other soils too. You'll notice there's up at the head, there is a projection. That's where the actual proboscis is formed, inside that projection right here. Wish I could show you.
Describe on the screen.
Yeah, if you see where the head is, above the head is this proboscis structure that is where the proboscis is actually formed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, at the jug handle, yes. That is a rather good character for identifying the different sphinx pupae. So if you're out digging and you find a sphinx come popping up, like if you're in your tomato garden and you're digging it over for the next year, and one of these sphinx moth pupae come up, that'll help you identify, because Manduca has a very long proboscis. Well, what we plan to do is go and actually look for the food plants for these guys. We're going to go and beat a pile of manzanita. We're going to, in the San Jacintos, we'll also beat the azalea, which is another member of the Ericaceae. That's one of the groups that it actually likes to use. And then it uses Sericocarpus. Now, I couldn't find very much Sericocarpus in the area of the San Jacintos where the lemon lilies occur, so I don't think that's playing a big role. But there's tons and tons of azalea and manzanita. So we'll go out and beat them and see, what sort of numbers that we get on these different plants. Maybe find one manzanita is much better than another manzanita, which could be useful information. We may find that certain azaleas are really, really good. Where it's really wet, for instance, they may not like, or where it's dry, they might like it. We may go out at night looking for caterpillars as well. One of the neat things about sphinx moth larvae is they reflect UV light. So I have little flashlights that just puts out UV light, and we'll check to see if we can find them that way. The value of that is these caterpillars, as they mature, they stop feeding during the day, feed only at night. So if you want to find a mature larva and see what they're doing at night, that's probably the only time that you're going to find them, because they're going to be hiding under the leaf litter during the day. And to get these caterpillars, I will take a net and shake the actual branches of the food plant into the net. And once I've gone through an entire tree doing that, I will then dump it on the road or some flat surface and look for the actual caterpillars. Another way is to put sheets around the bottom of the plant and take a stick and beat the stick. And then the caterpillars will fall off the plant onto the actual sheet. You can pull that sheet out, look for the caterpillars afterwards. And in order to identify them, we'll probably have to put each of these caterpillars onto the food plant that they were actually feeding in the field. Sometimes if they begin on azalea, they will not make a switch over to Sericocarpus because they become chemically adapted to that plant. So we're going to have sources of getting these food plants to feed these caterpillars. This shows the net. Like I could, this looks like Ericomeria nauseosus, which is probably not a food plant for them. But I would take these branches and actually put it inside the net and shake them. Remember I was telling you that I could find caterpillars by looking for the actual frass? And this is what the frass looks like for sphinxes. It's very distinctive. And if I find a pile on the ground, I can look up, and sure enough, there's a big caterpillar feeding on the bush, on the leaves of the bush. It's rather cool. Now these caterpillars can get to be about that long, so they're not little teeny weeny things. They're rather big. Now this is the great ash sphinx. Notice that it also has the blue horn, but when you look at the head capsule, it's green. And the slashes are very similar. This was a big part of the reason that they made mistakes thinking that ash was an actual food plant for Parreligans, because they identified the ash sphinx as perelegans. I don't know if you remember, but I told you that the lack of eye spots along the around the spiracles, that's an important character because the Manduca, which look fairly similar to that of the sphinx species, lack those eye spots. See, there's a little red center to the eye spots, and they're below the slashes or above the slashes in this caterpillar. Notice that the horn is red in this species. This is the tobacco hornworm, Manduca sexta, and this is the adult. Notice the orange spots on the abdomen, on the abdomen of the moth. Notice how big the forewings are compared to that of the hindwings. Those orange spots identify them as members of the Manduca genus. These orange spots are lacking in the sphinx genus. This is the rustic sphinx. I did not know it occurred in my yard, but I planted the right food plant. And sure enough, I found 3 caterpillars on this Chalopsis linearfolius, or the desert willow, which is its favorite food plant. So normally the desert willow grows at relatively low elevations. And this, because I planted it in my yard, I have a whole pile of it in my yard because I like desert willow. It's great for hummingbirds. That's why I knew that the actual moth came through the area and dropped off a bunch of eggs. Off of this single desert willow, I found 3 or 4 caterpillars, and they're all big like this. Notice on the thoracic segments, which are just below the head, there's kind of the rough markings. That's a good distinctive character separating it from the other Manduca. Remember the proboscis holder? This is a Manduca rustica pupa. Notice how much longer it is with Manduca. They have proboscis that's twice the length of that of Sphinx perelegans. Sphinx perelegans is around 1.6 inches. It's around 3.2 inches. This is Hyles lineata. One thing about Hyles lineata, which doesn't make it a good lemon lily pollinator, is that the lemon lily puts out nectar and scent at night. This moth is not nocturnal. It's what's called crepuscular. You know what crepuscular means? They like to fly in the evening or in the morning. And it's just the sun is either just rising or the sun is just setting. And they like cloudy days, but they don't like really sunny days. This is the sphinx moth caterpillar. They feed on forecock's and various species of Oenothera, or primroses. One of the problems with when you go out and you collect sphinx moths is that they can be parasitized. This is the parasitoid called Cotesia congregata. I don't know if it has a common name yet, but it is a braconid. In some cases, the female braconid will just lay 1 egg, and from that 1 egg will produce a pile of larvae. They kind of reproduce asexually inside the actual caterpillar itself. But you can see by the number of parasitoids that come out, number of braconids that come out, they don't leave much of the caterpillar after. It's pretty much no longer. This is the Pandora sphinx. You can see the horn on this Pandora sphinx looks a lot like the tendril of grape, this Pandora sphinx is just like the Ackman sphinx. It only feeds on members of the grape genus. It's really common in the east, whereas the Ackman is only found in the west, or is largely found in the west. This is the Catalpa sphinx, again covered with the braconids. Well, one of the things that we're going to be doing is setting up mercury vapor lights in the vicinity of the lemon lilies. We're not going to be doing right on top of the lemon lilies, basically because we don't want to disturb the sites. There, in some of these areas, there's actual frogs, yellow-legged frogs that we have to be careful about. And I think we'll probably be averaging around a mile from half a mile to a mile away from the actual lemon lilies. But that's not a big deal because they can see the light from that far away without any problem. Mercury vapor light puts out a lot of light. I have a 175 watt or 250 watt. And the reason mercury vapor is such a good light to use is it covers a lot of different lights of the spectrum. Some moths will only come to a certain spectrum. One of the things I've often discovered that the windy nights are not that great, but if it's windy when we're out there, we're putting it on the ground. If it's a nice night, we'll put it up on the trees because they like to come and land on the actual sheet itself. Well, the purpose, of course, is to determine the different sphinx species that are found in the area. And then what I'm going to do is take a white piece of filter paper, 2 centimeters by 1 centimeter, and fold it and rub it along the proboscis. This way, I should be able to take off the pollen off of the proboscis and figure out what species of plants they have been nectaring on. Now, the neat thing about lemon lily is they're really large and they're really relatively distinctive. They look like footballs with the golf ball markings in them. But we're going to have to look at a bunch of different species, or at least Kate is going to have to look at a number of different species of pollen to figure out which ones are on the actual proboscis itself. And from it, we hope to determine what kind of quantity of each of these species to determine how often they may be visiting these different plants. Are they visiting the lemon lily a lot? And the nice thing is I will be actually doing collecting at my yard, which is about 9 miles from the lemon lilies in the Santa Rosas. And if I find lemon lily on their proboscis, I know they're traveling quite a distance from the actual lemon lily. And this is what the mercury vapor light looks like. This was done in China Lake Naval Air Weapons Station. And when I did this, it was often windy. So I just strung the sheet right onto the flat ground and put rocks at the various corners and along the sides to keep the sheet from blowing up. Now, if you look closely at this picture, you can see that there are actually sphinx moths. There's a collecting vial right there, and there's one above the collecting vial and another one below the collecting vial. They're probably Hyles lineata, which is the striped morning sphinx, which is extremely common out in the desert. So what we plan to do is bring out a cooler filled with ice, and then once we've collected the moth, we'll stick them in jars, peanut butter jars, hopefully, and throw them inside that cooler and let them cool off. Once they're cooled off, I will go in and actually take the pollen off of the proboscis and then mark the moth. There's a system that Ehrlich has devised that can mark as many as 1,000 different individuals without having to, actually put 1,000 marks on it. It's different positions on the actual wings, which will determine what number it actually is. And that's Ehrlich's labeling system. I will probably use, or at least I'm thinking of using, a red magic marker, but I got to see how well that red lasts out in the field. The nice thing about it, if I put it on the underside, when they close the wings, those red marks will be covered. And the jar that they get put in will be labeled as to the number and location. And this is so we can match it up with the actual pollen collection of that. Like I said, I use a wet filter paper of 2 centimeters by 1 centimeter, folded down. So it's actually 1 centimeter when folded, 1 square centimeter. And I will give this pollen to Kate so she can identify it for us. Okay, I think that's it. Is there any questions? Okay,
So you'll have to repeat it, the question for the audience.
Okay.
Because they probably can't hear you. So species like not mahogany, the Serpentine Euphilotes can grow at a lower elevation than most lemon lily populations. Right?
correct.
So are you expecting that they're producing their larvae and maturing at lower elevation and then migrating, up to the lemon lily populations?
I suspect that could happen, but remember, they also feed on azalea
Yeah.
and also manzanita. So we may find, if we find there's no larvae on these plants, then Serpocarpus might become a very, 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 very important food plant. But if we find a lot of larvae on the actual azalea, which is a rhododendron species, and the manzanita, which is Arctostaphylos species, there are a bunch of species up there. I went up the Black Mountain Road, and there was a lot of different manzanita along that. And I saw a lot of azaleas too, but they were largely in kind of moist areas. And I'm kind of wondering if the sphinx would use moist areas, because where you hide it might be a problem for them, getting wet and what have you. We'll have to see. But that's the purpose of doing this, is to try and figure out, what they're actually using and how important these food plants are, each of them. I don't think that anyone has done this actual survey for these caterpillars out in the field, looking for them on manzanita and what have you. They were lower elevations.
Do they also feed on Cercocarpus ledifolius?
Probably. I went.
Yeah.
Orchid just asked if they also feed on Cercocarpus ledifolius, which is a Cercocarpus that occurs at higher elevations. I looked around Black Mountain. I couldn't find any ledifolius in that area, and there's no records of it there. But there is in the San Bernardinos.
Yeah.
So it's quite probable. There's a butterfly called Satyrium tetra. This butterfly feeds in my yard on Cercocarpus betuloides. When you get up into the high elevations of the San Bernardinos, it's on ledifolius. So that's quite probable. There's going to be certain chemicals. The problem with, though, if you notice, the caterpillar is really strongly white spotted. I don't know how well that would match with the ledifolius like it does with Cercocarpus betuloides. But I mean, that's the purpose of getting out there and doing this actual beating and collecting the caterpillars and bringing them home and rearing them. And hopefully from pollen studies, we'll also find out how many different plants these moths feed on. Parreligans is not known to feed on lilies before this. Its favorite is various Enithera species or primroses. And I got some primroses from Gina, which I'll be growing to test to see whether these adults will use it. Again, Arlie?
Yeah, it could be very different in the San Bernardino because you have a lot of mountain mahogany at the base of the.
I think Symphocarpus is more common up there too.
Yeah, so it was more common in both species in the San Bernardino. But another plant that I was wondering, I've seen sphinx moths visit Diplopus longiflorus in my yard. But I'm wondering.
What was the genus?
Diplopus, which was.
Okay, yeah. Right, okay.
It's a rock monkey flower. And at the higher elevations, and it has a very long tube. Okay.
Right, yeah.
And so.
Which is good for sphinx moths.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm wondering if that's a potential other nectaring source
Yeah, I mean, that's one, I mean, if we find anything in the area, if we find a Diplacus in the area, one of these monkey flowers, we can actually, collect the pollen off it, throw the flowers into a Ziploc bag, and then when we get home, split them open and try and collect pollen, and then put it underneath the slide and see what it looks like, so we can identify if it's actually coming off the proboscis.
Because its blooming period is the right time.
Oh, it's at the right time?
So whether, I don't know, people on here.
Diplacus calasinus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mimulus
right.
calasinus.
Yeah, that's the way I learned it. But I've noticed it's going back and forth.
Yeah.
Botanists kind of change their mind back and forth,
That-
as do Lepidopterus. Uh-huh. Yeah, there's a really neat small-headed fly at Echosera that loves going to that plant, and it's got a really long proboscis. It's kind of a neat fly. It's green, and it looks just like a halictid bee when you see it out in the field, but it's a fly. And these are guys that specialize on parasitizing spiders, spider eggs.
What are daytime flyers like? Real small.
Oh, I forgot to mention the fact that the scent and the nectar are largely produced at night. So this really selects for a nocturnal species. And because the throat of the flower is deep, it's selecting for something that has a fairly long proboscis. It can't be, some sort of nocturnal little tiny weeny moth comes and actually nectar on it. It's got to be a fairly good size one. But that's the reason I should have brought that up at the very beginning.
Does the fragrance start at dusk?
It does.
So it is possible that Radiata would potentially.
Yeah, it is. But I think it produces most of it at night. But it will start, I think, as the sun is setting. This is something that I should, when we're out in the field, actually spend some time. We should walk over to it just as the sun is rising and don't smell it yet. Oh, there it is.
There are ways to collect the fragrance.
There is? Ah.
And then use gas chromatography to identify.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
That for the.
that's beyond our expense account.
Yeah, no, this later.
I used, yes?
In their Lepidopterus survey of the black gardens, how many sphinxes did you get?
I've never really done anything beyond diurnal. I know that the Hyles lineata is there. But I haven't looked at the other sphinxes. If there are food plants there, I would be surprised that the Sphinx perelegans is not there. I mean, is Cercocarpus planted at the Botanic Gardens?
It's in my yard too.
Uh-huh.
Right next to it.
Well, it's abundant in my yard too. In fact, that's how I discovered that they used to think that this was a single brooded species, only flew in mid to late June. I found caterpillars of this on May, because when I was out beating for Satyrium tetra larvae, which is more of a favorite of mine, I was getting Sphinx larvae too. And the Sphinx larvae, of course, was Sphinx perelegans, the elegant Sphinx. So it has to be out in May. And then when I reared these guys, I had some individuals hatch out in August. So there's 3 broods of this species. So there may be 4 at low elevations, for all I know. That's,
So there's a couple of questions online.
yeah.
One person says, how long does it take for the sphinx moth caterpillar to shed from one instar to the next?
It's generally within a day or two. Oh.
Yeah.
Here I am. It's generally within a day or two. That's how long it takes for them to shed from one instar to another.
And then there's another question from Michael D. Says that Bruce Watts in Idlewild became a citizen scientist who was an expert in Lepidoptera and
Well, he is more into butterflies as far as I know.
yes, and so this person is saying that there's a movement among his friends to get his book that he didn't published.
Ah,
So
so who was the person that
I can just see, let me go into participants and I'll be able to.
because
there.
I know Dennis.
It was Michael Duvall that was asking about Bruce Wright. Bruce Watts, excuse me. Gordon, you know Bruce Watts, yes?
I've never met him, but Dennis has often talked about him, and that he
Okay.
was planning to write a book on the butterflies of the Jacintos. After I'm doing a book now on the Death Valley area. After I get that done, I plan to go on to doing the mountains of Southern California, which will include the Jacintos. I've recently done the Vulcan Mountains survey. I surveyed for the butterflies there. One of the neat things about the Vulcan Mountain survey was that I put up Malaise traps, and I ended up getting butterflies in the Malaise traps that I did not find when I went out and surveyed. Like I found Loranthomytura spinatorum, which is a hair streak that feeds on taussia. What's that? Dwarf mistletoe of pines. I had never seen the mistletoe there, so I didn't realize that the butterfly could even be there, but it has to be there. There's Jeffrey pines that sort of scattered around there. Jeffrey pine is a good host for is it Arcetobium? Yeah, I think it's Arcetobium species. And then I hate to admit this, I never found the Euphilotes in up East Riverside. The dammer's blue. I got a bunch of the adults in the Malaise trap, which sort of makes me wonder, how good am I at finding butterflies? But anyway, and there was one other. There was a juniper hair streak called Mytora loci. I also got that in the Malaise trap, but I only got one. But the same was true with spinatorum. But I got a bunch of the dammer's blue. I should have spotted these butterflies. Good normally at finding little blue butterflies. So are there any other questions?
I'm looking, but I don't think so.
Oh, one more question. There's daylilies all over the place. When do they produce their daylilies?
Oh, daylilies? I don't know. I am not an expert in lilies. I did notice a lot of lilies when I was in the East, particularly the wood lilies and what have you, but
It's not a native.
Oh, I understand.
and the
Some of
structure too. Is that Kate?
Yeah, some of our daylilies, our bred daylilies, have lemon lily genes in them because lemon lily was used to breed some of our daylilies. I don't know whether it came with a scent or not.
I didn't know they were that close to getting reproductive success with those different species. So lemon lily will mate with, will cross with daylilies?
The breeders did some crossing. I don't know the details. And a lot of those things are vegetatively reproduced. So
Right.
they had to cross in there somewhere.
Right, yeah. Which suggests they would have to use pollen of one species into the flower of the other.
Yes.
And then eventually they could, once they've got the hybrid, they can reproduce it asexually.
Right.
So Gordon, you announced that we have a door prize that's not in mahogany.
Oh, there's a door prize of Mount Mahogany.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an appropriate plant to have.
Right.
I should have brought some of mine.
Yeah. Okay, so. Well, we're gonna wrap off the door, right?
So that's it. Thanks. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching.
Okay, thank you, folks, for attending in person and online, and we're ending the slideshow. Click to exit. And did you end it?
We haven't ended it yet.
Okay, let's go ahead and end the program.
No, I like to tell them first.
Oh, okay. Because we're still recording, but so I just wanted to stop the recording. No, wait, I'll let me do it right. So I can
Okay.
listen up. Okay. Oh, okay, so I can leave. Okay.